that class. He said, your most vulnerable time and the place you've got to watch the most is after a great victory. Because there you will be the most susceptible to the attacks of the enemy. I mentioned that to you last week, and I fell on this quote from Andrew Bonar, who was a great preacher at one time in times past. And Bonar said this, let us be as watchful after the victory as before the battle. That says it really well. Let us be as watchful after the victory as before the battle. Why do I say that? Because we didn't read the passage before today. I didn't do it last week either. But in essence, they are coming off the greatest victory that will present itself in the Old Testament, that being the deliverance of the people of Israel from Egypt's bondage. The Exodus is the high point of the Old Testament. I said the Old, not the New. But it is the high point of the Old Testament. And they are coming off of a sweet victory. The passage prior is a song that Moses wrote as the sea swallowed the Egyptian army and God brought them what seemingly was an impossible victory out of defeat, and what looked like sure defeat with the much mightier, stronger army of the Egyptians bearing down on the smaller, weaker Israelites. But God showed up big in their life, and so Moses wrote a song. His sister got on board with the song and responded in antiphonal praise. Her and the ladies of the nation got together and began to sing and play their tambourines and say, sing to the Lord, verse 21, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. And all looked well for the Israelites. And so they set off on the journey towards the promised land. But on the journey, God brought them to a wilderness, the wilderness of Shur. That's a place in the northwest corner, if you will, of the Arabian Peninsula. It's a place just past over the Red Sea and where they would have crossed. And they come in out of this great victory and relishing the victory. And now God brings them to the wilderness of Shur. The word Shur means walls. The wilderness of walls. Isn't it interesting that after a great victory, God brought them to a place that seemed to enclose them again? Isn't it interesting that Jesus says in John 16:33, New Testament, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And that word tribulation means like the walls are closing in on you. You're getting squeezed. Have you ever felt like you were getting squeezed? Yeah. And I'm not talking about a love squeeze from someone who loved you, but I'm talking about being squeezed. By feeling suffocated. By feeling like you have nowhere to turn. Left, right, front, back, up, down. It's all closing in on you. The walls, the wilderness of the walls is closing in on you. They were in the wilderness of Shur, and they were just 3 days out of victory. So this was like our Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It's like our Wednesday. It's like victory on Sunday in church, and by Wednesday, you need something from God because there are 3 days and there's no water. That's a problem. We all need something to drink. They were in the wilderness. They were following Moses' directive. They were following what they thought was God's directive, but they are without water. And it says when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah. That's even a bigger problem. As I mentioned last week, there was water in Marah. But the waters are undrinkable. They're salty. As a matter of fact, as I read further this week, the Arabs call that area the worst drinking water in the Middle East. Why, in God's name, would he bring them from a victory, let them cross over on dry ground, not one of them dies? He brings them now 3 days' journey into the wilderness and brings them to a place with water that they cannot drink. And as I said to you last week, that's worse than having no water at all, because they could see the water, but they couldn't drink the water. They were that close. And have you ever felt that close to feeling like you're coming out of this thing, but you're still that far away? I don't know, I may be talking to myself today, but I got a feeling there's at least 3 to 4 people I'm talking to today. And when they came to the bitter place, Mara, they could not drink the waters of Mara, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Mara. They named it a bitter place. There may be some of us here today, and I'm not asking for a raising of hands or any kind of public acknowledgement, but this will apply to you, or if it does, you'll know it. Who's in a place of bitterness. You are in a place where it seems like there's just something not right in what's going on in your life. It may have to do with relationships. It may have to do with finances. It might have to do with health. It might be this. It might be that. We could name 100 or 1,000 things today. But you're in a place, and instead of getting you closer to God, you feel like you're further away, or God stepped away from you, or you stepped away from Him. Somebody stepped away from each other. So they were in a place, the name of it was called Mara. They were in a place of bitterness, you might say. I don't want to spiritualize it too much, because it was a real place with a real problem. They didn't have drinking water. You can't go very long. We need to fast and pray. The Bible encourages us, exhorts us to fast and pray. But it's very difficult when you fast to fast water. You need water to drink. You need some kind of fluids in you to keep you hydrated. And so either their water supply had run out, or maybe they'd been 3 days without drinking. I don't know, but they were in need of drinking water. So the people complained against Moses, verse 24. Logical question. Okay, you're our leader. We come to you. What are we going to drink? We've got a problem. You brought us out here. Your God, the God that we serve, or we're attempting to serve, brought us out into the walls of wilderness, in a walled place, in a place of dryness, in a place where there's water here, but it's undrinkable. What are we going to do, Moses? And they complained to Moses. I mentioned to you a parallel scripture that I'll go back and read again. In the book of Philippians, we read something that Paul wrote about complaining. Before I go to that, let me just say this. The Israelites will have 3 distinct upcoming moments, not only in Exodus 15, but in Exodus 16, they will complain about not having something to eat. Exodus 16. In the very next chapter, in Exodus 17, they will complain again that they have nothing to drink. So it's eating, it's drinking, eating, drinking. There's a problem in 15, 16, and 17, and we see them positioned in the same place, complaining against Moses, complaining about what's going on, and Moses having to intercede or cry out to God on behalf of his people. As a matter of fact, one scholar said, I was reading this week, said this was the first time, Exodus 15, where Moses directly intercedes for the nation. The first time, it's not the only time he'll do it, but the first time we have at least recorded where he's really interceding for the nation is here in the 15th chapter of Exodus, when he cries out to God that God would supply them with something to drink. But anyway, about this thing about complaining.